What's up? What are you laughing about?
Why do you always do that? You always do that. We've been on this thing for what, 20 minutes now talking.
I don't know.
Well, I just hit record. We're recording.
Bust it open, huh? Let me see you try.
Are your technicians adequately trained for the future of the industry? With information and technology rapidly evolving, it's more important than ever to have your techs stay ahead of the curve, which is why the teams at the Institute and iSCAN by Autoland created the iSCAN Technical Training Conference, which is returning in May right here in Ogden, Utah. ITTC 2023 is going to be even bigger than last year's inaugural event, with an additional day of training so that technicians walk away with more information. Attendees will learn alongside other technicians from all across the country, with plenty of time to network and exchange ideas in between. You don't want to miss out on everything that the iSCAN Technical Training Conference has to offer. Register online now so that you can be a part of one of the best technical events of 2023. We'll see you guys at ITTC 2023.
So a good friend of mine reached out and said, will you talk to this friend of mine? They have a shop and they're going through some stressful times. And I said, okay, can you explain to me what the stressful times are? He said, you should just call them. So I called them and I said, hey, tell me what's going on. And they said, listen, my dad had a shop. My dad recently passed away. I've been running the shop since my dad began to get sick. Been running the shop, and I just lost, or I'm losing, a high producer in the shop. Now I have 2 technicians. I have the capability of, I want to say the shop's 4 bays that they use, and 2 of those bays are leased out to somebody else, right? And they said, here's the deal, is I've got a lot of equipment that I'm paying for. And so that eats up a lot of my cash flow. And they said, everything has been fairly good, but I can't lose someone and keep the business going. And I said, okay, well, help me understand where we're at right now.
Is this going from 2 techs to 1 tech?
Going from 2 techs to 1 tech and an advisor.
Yeah.
And, right, and they have an advisor now. So it's 2 techs and an advisor. And I said, so help me understand where we're at right now, right? Let's get a game plan for what we've got. And the first response that I got, and I shared this, I was completely open and honest. The first response I got when I said, well, what kind of numbers, what kind of revenue do we have right now? And they said, I don't really know. And I said, hang on, that makes me a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
Because if you're a shop owner, right, like, you know, me and you, we go out of town all the time and we're calling the shop and we're looking at the numbers. We're talking about our numbers. We're going over what's our gross profit
We don't have to
per
call.
hour.
We just pull it up on our phones.
Exactly. We're looking at the numbers. We know what the numbers are. And I said, so, you know, it makes me nervous that you wouldn't know. And she said, well, usually I'm about $55,000 a month. I'm like, okay. So, you know, 2 techs and an advisor, $55,000 to $75,000 a month is really kind of in the range, right?
Yeah.
But there's more space. And so we talked through this for a few minutes, and I said, hey, we need more information. We need more data, because we have to look at what the shop's actually doing, because is it possible that the reason this tech's leaving because they're not getting paid what they want to get paid. They're going somewhere to make more money. And they said they're leaving for benefits, they're leaving for more money, and I can't afford to do that. I said, so there's a couple things, right? From my perspective, it could be that 1 tech is performing all the work. And so he's carrying the bulk of the load, and he's saying, I can go anywhere else and work for $30 an hour and you're paying me $20.
Yeah.
So why would I continue to do all the work? You got these people in place and there's one of them selling service and the other one's just not doing anything.
Yeah.
We need to understand, like, where is the revenue coming from?
Okay.
And we need to understand what the margins are. And it got to the point that I was thinking about this, and I thought, what questions do you ask a shop owner that's in this situation? Because we need to understand, is this a cash flow problem? And it sounds like it's a cash flow problem, right? Not enough revenue to pay those bills. But what questions, David, would you ask a shop owner who called and said that to you? What data are you going to be asking them for to analyze the business?
So I would immediately ask the same thing that you asked. What's the shop doing gross revenue wise?
Okay.
If they didn't know, then we need to go into their SMS.
Okay.
I need to know how many cars they're seeing per day, per week, however you want to break it down. I need to see what the production is in the shop, if it is split 50-50 or 55-45 or 60-40.
Yep.
See where the split is. I once talked to a shop owner that had, I think, 3 or 4 technicians, but it turns out 80% of the paying work, what actually paid the bills, was being generated by one technician.
Yeah.
And then they had 3 GSs.
Yep.
And the
they
3
really
GSs
weren't doing any work.
Well, they were doing work, but the problem was that they had a discount oil change model.
Yeah.
And so and they were open a bunch of hours. So they needed to be there to bring all these cars in, and say they were just cycling through cars, 200 plus cars a month. And whatever work got sold was then handed off to this one technician.
Yeah.
That technician leaves. They stop generating any profit.
Yeah.
They could have stopped the oil changes and made just as much money just doing the repair work. Obviously, they were bringing in the cars to try to sell additional work, but the problem was they weren't set up to properly funnel the work to the technician that was doing all the work. Okay, so we need to see how it's split. That's incredibly important. And then that will then tell you how everything breaks down once you get in the SMS, because you're going to need to see where their gross profit margins are. They may not know necessarily, so you ask them, well, what are you paying the technicians? And then what did you spend in parts last month? So you're going to have to go into the bank statement and see, because they may not have their parts set up properly. They may not be billing it out properly. And a lot of times they're letting things slip, right? So you're buying $10,000 in parts, but you're only showing in the SMS $7,500 sold. Does that make sense? So
Absolutely.
there are parts being purchased that are getting put on the car, but never show up on the ticket because they have no system set up, right? So now you need to know the margins. Now that you've got the margins and you got the gross revenue numbers, now you can start to figure out, am I underpriced? Am I underpaying the technicians? Usually that'll handle it. Or do I have a car count problem that I just don't have enough cars here because all my other numbers are right? I've had that problem personally myself.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and sometimes I have it as well in ways.
I know, right? Me too. Me too.
But I remember sitting on the phone with a coach, and he was telling me, he's like, man, you just got a car count problem. All your other numbers are in line. If you just you get another 5 cars a week, all of a sudden everything's in line. Everything's good.
Yeah. Well, and so that's kind of how I went about this. As I said, I want to see your labor revenue. I didn't ask for gross profit percentage, right? Because it can trick you. I said, I want to see your labor revenue. I want to see your parts revenue. I want to see your hour count, and I want you to break that down per technician. And I also want to see your car count, right, as a whole. Yeah. And so if we have car count, if we have build hours, we have labor revenue, and we have parts revenue, and then we ask for parts cost and labor cost, guess what we can derive from that? Now we can derive true GP, right? And I said, look, if you've got a P&L that's halfway clean, let's take a look at it, right? And that way we can see if there's a variance in there. But the reality is... Did you really
ask for a P&L? You didn't ask for a P&L, did you?
I asked for a P&L.
Why would you ask for a P&L? Hey, I don't know my gross revenue numbers, but you have a P&L.
They're paying an accountant, right?
Oh,
and the accountant, they're just turning all this over to an accountant and saying, here, do this, right? And so what my hope is what I have seen and what I've experienced is with that data, you can back into the shop and look at a lot of stuff, right? There's a lot of key metrics just within that data alone that you can determine the health of the business. And I think, this person's talking about selling the shop. And I said, look, whatever you do right now, don't try and sell the shop. Because if the shop's not profitable, it's not going to sell for anything. You don't own the property. You're still paying for the equipment. Do not try and sell the shop right now. Stop. If anything, get the business profitable. You want to walk away from the business? Great. Walk away from the business. But get the business profitable before you do, because it's going to end up costing. You're still going to pay for that equipment for years to come. If
they only owe 20% of the value or the 20% of the original purchasing price. So if they paid $10,000 on that piece of equipment, they still owe $2,000. They might be able to sell and just have it be a wash. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
They'll sell all the equipment because that's what it's worth. It's 5 to 10 cents on the dollar of the equipment, and then a couple $1,000 for the customer list and the name and the phone number, and then that's it.
That's
it's not
the
worth
extent
anything
of it.
else.
Right.
But did they say the accountant was a friend?
No, did not say that. Didn't really dig into that conversation too much more than right here. But you're
The accountant's
probably right.
Mima the
Right.
accountant.
It happens all the time. How many times have we had that conversation with somebody? We have been at events and had that conversation with somebody together, right?
I mean,
and well, my
numbers are a
mother-in-law
mess.
does it,
Yeah.
right? Come on now. That one of the biggest things that I've seen, like all of these people that we've become friends with, and I've said this before, I'm hardly qualified to give this advice, but they'll be like, hey, can you just look at this and tell me what you think's off? Well, what I think's off is you have labor sales, part sales, and expenses on your P&L, right? That's all there is.
3 lines, yeah.
And you just you're not breaking it down. Dude, my P&L's probably got 150 accounts in it.
Yeah.
Right. And it's broken down to such a degree. And now I can look at the percentages and I can compare my business to these guys that are, we've got a lot of diagnostic techs that listen. We always talk about known goods, right? Compare your business to a known good.
Yeah, that makes
because
sense.
there's a lot of numbers that you can look at and say, hey, this is pretty common. May not be perfect, may be variables, but if you're, what is it we say with pricing? If you're more than 10% away, if you're 10% away from everybody on your P&L line somewhere, you got to say, either something's not right in this, I've misentered something, or I've got a problem I need to fix.
But at the very least, having clean information in the shop management system, so all the parts get funneled into the shop management system, 100%. Use the file folder system, right?
Yeah.
The folder system will handle that. So you use something like that to get clean information in the SMS, and then you've got the payroll data, and then you've got your gross revenue number from the SMS. You're not running 2 books. No cash this, and then, we give a discount. None of that garbage, right?
Yep.
That will at least get you a baseline, and then you can fix the rest. You really can. Yep. But you got to have at least that, because without that,
exactly,
you don't have anything.
The last piece of advice I have for somebody in those shoes is listen. Life gets stressful, and we think the easiest thing to do is turn and just let the business run itself and do what the business does. But the problem is the damage accumulates, right? And when you finally have to come back out to it, right? No matter how much is going on in your life, if you walk away from the business for any period of time and you don't have a hand in it, you're not watching the numbers, sooner or later, if you don't have the staff in place to do that, I'm talking about 2-bay, 3-bay, small mom and pop shops. If you walk away from the business for any period of time, the BS accumulates, the trouble accumulates, it climbs up this ladder, and no matter what, there is no free pass. You don't get out of solving those problems. I'll just sell the place. That's great, but you're still going to have to solve these problems. You cannot just turn a blind eye. You have to solve the problems. If you're going to sell it before you get to that point, great, no problem. But you can't turn a blind eye and just let the business do what it does unless you have a system, a process, and policies in place to allow for that.
Get down in the car.